the New York story is this. You heard the kind of the superlative standing. We are the #1 marijuana arrest capital in the world, and no exaggeration there. So let me break down the numbers a little bit. We got to this work coming from the so-called juvenile justice perspective. We got to this work because we have been fighting for the last 5 to 10 years on how do we take this work to the next level where it's not just regressive and reactive, like they come on with something and we stop something or no more, stop this, whatever. It's a long story, but one angle that we've been hashing away at in terms of juvenile justice field is what's called disproportionate minority contact, a federally recognized term that the government uses. Is basically racism in government terms. So disproportionate minority contact. So I'm going to use that as DMC from now on so everyone knows what that is. Just so you know, in terms of the history of the term, it went from disproportionate minority confinement to disproportionate minority contact. Meaning, the federal agency, Office of Juvenile Justice Delinquency Prevention, recognized that every state has disproportionate minority confinement. That to change that term is that how do we get to disproportionate minority confinement? How do we get to this disproportionality in the prison system or detention system? It starts with disproportionate minority contact, right? How does disproportionate minority contact happen? Where? In the communities. Who's the first point of contact in the communities to get you into the system? The police, right? The mouth of the system, the biggest contributing factor and player is the police. No buts or hows about it, right? Now, just in terms of contact. Now, that's kind of where we have been coming at for years. And we have various arms, but when we found out about, we've known about marijuana arrests forever, right? How it's happening. Now, I'm going to break down the stats and I'm going to just work backwards for a second. And due to research spearheaded by Harry Levine and Deborah Smalls around this issue, we've been able to connect the dots and kind of bring all this strategy to the ground. Last year, 2010, 53,000 marijuana arrests, and you heard Dr. Levine, it's the top charge, okay? So 53,000 marijuana arrests in New York State, just to kind of give you a scope and scale of this issue, okay? In 2010, I'm going to reference a little bit of what happened to you. In New York State, and when they said 53,000 arrests for marijuana possession, they were talking about, they were charging them with marijuana in plain view, right? So that's an arrestable crime, that's a misdemeanor on the books in the law of New York State. So you're saying 53,000 people were running around in New York State with marijuana in plain view one way or another. Now, New York State's big, so who knows? If I told you that 50,000 of those arrests came from New York City, that in and of itself gives you, right? So only like 3,000 people run around with marijuana in upstate New York, and 50,000 people in New York City all run around with marijuana in plain view, apparently, just by the numbers. Now, if I told you that 53,000, if you looked at the 50,000 people arrested in New York City, vast majority of them, who do you think they are? Young Black and Latino men, 16 to 34, right? Now, if you live in New York, or if you come from any kind of large urban communities where policing is heavy duty in low-income communities of color, last people who are going to run around with marijuana in plain view is young Black and Latino, right? So that doesn't make sense, right? So then, and then if you look at the community districts, the zip code where, the precincts where these arrests happen, they align almost head-to-head with the highest district, with the districts with the highest juvenile incarceration and incarceration rates, right? So now, somebody actually came to me and said, well, I guess marijuana is the gateway drug, right? So then, let's dial back here. How then, all these things that don't make sense, then how did we have 50,000 arrests for marijuana in plain view in these communities? How did that happen? Policing practice. Which policing practice? Stop and frisk. Beyond that, straight up illegal searches. That happen every day, literally on the clock. And so, fast track, after 2 years of exposing this and pushing it hard at the state legislature level, city legislature, but really in the communities, I'm talking, we targeted, yes, the hoods, right, where these policing happened the heaviest, with Know Your Rights, Enforce Your Rights training. We have to have enforce your rights because, knowing your rights doesn't get you anywhere. So we have to strategize on how do you enforce, and that's the community organizing part. On a personal level, how do you assert your rights? And that's for a whole other panel. I think there's one coming up. And on a community level, how do we get aware and how can we leverage our different positionalities? And then also on a city level. And so, having said that, there was one point that I kind of lost here. But in terms of this whole thing coming together on the community level, in terms of this stuff, we did win a victory. It is a victory. It just happened, how many months has it been? 2? A month, only a month. So it's a victory, and I'm going to get into the regressive part here. All this is regressive, what we're doing in many ways. So the victory, quickly. After exposing all this, we got, basically what was happening is that the cops were not even, they were doing illegal searches, and they were tricking people into turning out their packets, and then they're charging them with marijuana and plain view, right? Because they don't have laser vision. So basically, by research, you're talking about 75 to 80% of the people who were arrested for marijuana and plain view were illegally arrested. These were illegal arrests. So the victory is that we finally got the commissioner, the NYPD commissioner, to issue an order to his commanding officers, and with lots of media blitz, that you are no longer, it's an operations order to his commanding officers, you are no longer allowed to arrest people when people turn out their pockets involuntarily, when you have forced them to do that you cannot arrest them, but you have to give them a ticket the way it is in the books, which is it's a violation for up to 25 grams of marijuana in New York State. Right now, it's on the books. So just basically enforce the law as it is. And so I just bring you up to that speed, and I hope we get into the questions, because so now what we have is what you guys essentially have, right? So for us, what would have happened to you before the order, for the most part, is that you would have been arrested, right? Whereas after the order, now you're getting a ticket. And believe you me, everyone is overjoyed at that because of the injustice and whatnot, but it doesn't go far enough. And this is where we need to ask the question of, as we're doing all this stuff, what are we doing this towards? What are we trying to reclaim? What are we trying to build? And that's the part I really want to build with you about. So that's going to have to inform how we break this issue down. That's going to have to inform how we do the organizing in the communities. Because it can't just be about decriminalization. But it can't just be about legalization either. Especially for communities of color, we have to entail public safety discussion and reclaiming public safety beyond the law enforcement, right? So that's my piece.